He ousted the French, defied the West, and walked a lonely path in global politics. Burkina Faso's most controversial leader stepped into Barack Obama's world, unsure of what to expect. What he encountered, however, was a revelation, a conversation that would forever alter the narrative of African leadership. Two men from two vastly different worlds engaged in a dialogue that could reshape the future of the African continent. The world wasn't ready for what came next when President Ibrahim Traoré met Barack Obama. Ibrahim Traoré, at just 37 years old, sat in his office, engrossed in intelligence briefings, when his top aide, Madou Kabo, entered the room holding a sealed envelope. His face carried a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. "Mr. President," Madou said, handing over the envelope, "an official invitation has arrived from the United States. Former President Barack Obama has requested a private meeting with you in Washington." Ibrahim glanced at the envelope, perplexed. His relationship with the West had been tense since his military coup in 2022. He had ousted French forces, rejected the legacy of colonialism, and realigned his country with Russia, decisions that rattled Western powers. "Obama," Ibrahim muttered, holding the envelope in his hands. "Why would he want to meet with me now?" The letter was brief and formal, a request for a private conversation about shared interests and the future of West Africa. Yet the sender's name intrigued Ibrahim more than the content. Later that day, Ibrahim paced the marble halls of the presidential palace, deep in thought. Once a soldier, now one of Africa's youngest and most controversial leaders, he had sworn to fight terrorism and root out corruption in his country. But his bold methods had left him diplomatically isolated. "Do you intend to accept?" Mamadou asked, his voice careful. Ibrahim paused, staring out at the bustling streets of Ouagadougou below. After a long silence, he turned to Mamadou and simply said, "Yes, it's time I hear what he has to say." 3 days later, the presidential jet took off from Ouagadougou, bound for Washington, D.C. As the aircraft soared over the Atlantic Ocean, Ibrahim looked out the window, reflecting on his journey from an unknown soldier to the leader of a nation. Now he was on his way to meet one of the most influential figures in modern politics. When the plane landed at Dulles International Airport, a heavy rain fell, drenching the tarmac. There were no welcoming crowds or grand gestures, only a lone American diplomat, James Mitchell, standing under an umbrella. "Welcome to the United States, President Traoré," Mitchell said. "President Obama will receive you tomorrow in Washington." That evening, Ibrahim settled into a quiet hotel in downtown Washington, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. He took a solitary walk through the city. Washington pulsed with life, bright lights, hurried footsteps, and a world far removed from his own. "I never imagined I'd be here," he muttered to himself, trying to absorb the magnitude of the moment. Back in his hotel room, Ibrahim received a call from home. His wife, Mariam, was on the line. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice warm but concerned. "It's different," he replied, gazing at the neon skyline of Washington. "But tomorrow, I'll finally understand why he called me." The next morning, Ibrahim arrived at Barack Obama's private residence in Kalorama, Washington. The house was elegant but understated, a far cry from the opulence that many would expect for such a public figure. Obama, now 63 years old, greeted Ibrahim at the door with his trademark smile. "President Traoré, it's an honor," Obama said, as he shook Ibrahim's hand. Ibrahim, still unsure of the meeting's true purpose, responded with gratitude. "Thank you for receiving me." Inside, the house was filled with family photos and books, many of which centered on Africa and the African diaspora. Michelle Obama made a brief, graceful appearance before retreating to allow the 2 leaders to converse privately. "Coffee or tea?" Obama asked as he poured the drinks himself. "Coffee, please," Ibrahim replied. Then, without delay, Obama began. You've made some bold decisions, Ibrahim, decisions that have concerned some, but I know your heart is for your people. Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. With all due respect, Mr. Obama, I did what I had to do. But Burkina Faso has been exploited for generations. Obama nodded in understanding. I understand your frustration, he said, his tone measured. But isolation isn't the way forward. Africa needs bridges, not walls. Their conversation continued for hours, touching on terrorism in the Sahel, Africa's fractured alliances, and the delicate balance between idealism and survival. As the conversation shifted to more personal matters, Obama shared his own experiences. When I became president, he began, people said I was too young, too inexperienced. You're facing something similar. Ibrahim nodded, his thoughts drifting back to his own rise to power. The difference is, your country had a functioning system. I had to seize power to stop the chaos. Obama studied him thoughtfully. That's why I wanted to meet with you. You acted with courage, but courage without wisdom. That's dangerous. Later, they strolled through Obama's garden. Ibrahim asked a question that had been weighing on his mind for days. What do you really think of leaders like me, young men who take power through unconventional means? Obama paused. His answer was quiet, but it carried weight. I think you are a product of a broken system. The real question is, what will you do with the power you now hold? Those words struck Ibrahim like a thunderclap. In that moment, something inside him cracked. A wall built from years of pressure and isolation came tumbling down. For the first time in a long time, Ibrahim allowed himself to feel the weight of his position. He cried, not in anger, but in release. Obama placed a firm hand on his shoulder. There's no shame in tears, Obama said. There's only honor in bearing the burden. Ibrahim composed himself, his eyes still glistening. I didn't expect this, he admitted. What did you expect? Obama asked gently. Criticism, judgment. I don't agree with all your choices, Obama replied, but I understand them. In the final moments of the meeting, Obama posed a question that would change everything. Have you ever considered how your story is told around the world? Ibrahim hesitated. It's not a flattering story. Then let's change it, Obama said, his tone resolute. Let's have a public dialogue, an unscripted conversation about leadership, youth, and the future of Africa. Why me? Ibrahim asked, still uncertain. Because I see something in you that others ignore. You're a leader willing to act when others hesitate, and the world needs to hear that. Ibrahim weighed the risks, the scrutiny, and the possible blowback. What if this damages your reputation? He asked. Obama smiled. I've lived my story. The question is, are you ready to live yours out loud? After a long pause, Ibrahim finally replied, I am, within days. The world knew something monumental was unfolding. Media outlets buzzed with speculation. Rumors swirled about a secret alliance, but the truth was far more powerful than fiction. Ibrahim traveled to Chicago, where the first recording would take place at the Obama Foundation. The setting was intimate, 2 chairs, soft lighting, and no politics, just truth. Ready to make history? Obama asked, moments before they began. I was born ready, Ibrahim responded. They spoke for hours about the Sahel, the future of Africa, and the struggles of leadership. When asked about his critics, Ibrahim looked directly into the camera and answered simply, when your country is burning, you don't have time for diplomatic niceties. You act. You survive. 3 days later, the conversation aired, and the world shifted. Social media erupted. News cycles changed. Clips of Ibrahim's vulnerable moments, his tears, his honesty, and his passion went viral. In Burkina Faso, the people watched in silence. Then, As the day progressed, celebrations erupted in homes, public squares, and even on dusty village televisions. They saw a leader they barely recognized, human, brave, and finally understood. Ibrahim, watching from home, wiped away her tears as she spoke to her husband on the phone. "The world finally sees you," she whispered. African leaders began to change their tone. Western analysts began to rewrite their narratives. Even Paris, once at odds with Ibrahim, took quiet notice. At an impromptu press conference, Obama said, "I've met many leaders. Few have impressed me like Ibrahim Traoré. He represents a new generation of African leadership, bold, unorthodox, and unafraid." On the final day of Ibrahim's visit to Chicago, the two men walked along the shores of Lake Michigan. The city gleamed behind them. "You've changed how I see leadership," Obama said. "And you've reminded me that I don't have to walk alone," Ibrahim replied. As Ibrahim boarded his flight back to Burkina Faso, he was no longer just a controversial figure. He had become a symbol of resilience, truth, and a new African dawn. The story that shook the world wasn't about war, scandal, or power. It was about a conversation between two men from two worlds who dared to speak with honesty, and the world listened.